What's up, YouTube, and welcome to the next episode of my PS1 Publisher Spotlight series. Today we're going to take a look at, really historically, one of my favorite publishers of niche Japanese titles in the United States, and that is Natsume. Natsume has been around for quite a while. They really started out in the NES era in the US as a publisher, but they are also a developer in Japan, and it's a very convoluted history. So you can read up on that on Wikipedia if you'd like to learn more. But essentially there's two companies in Japan that have split off from the original Natsume, which is Natsume Atari, no relation to Atari US, and also Natsume Incorporated, no relation to Natsume US. However, those two companies do sometimes develop games that we do see in the US, possibly by Natsume or even another publisher. So again, very, very convoluted. But let's, for the purposes of this video, think of Natsume as publisher of Japanese titles, most likely from other companies in most cases. And again, I'm a big fan of some of the series that they brought over to the US, probably best known for things like Pocky and Rocky, Ninja Warriors, Wild Guns, Harvest Moon, things like that. But for the PS1 era, they kind of phoned it in. This really isn't going to be one of the best subsets that I've collected. So they did bring over 10 titles for the US PS1. Many of these were actually budget titles that came out late in the PS1 life. And then a few gems mixed in. I mean, it's really not a horrible library, but overall, it's missing some of the key series that Natsume, the publisher, is known for. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and get started. We'll take a look at our first title. This was one of those late release budget titles like I was referring to. And I do want to draw your attention to the Natsume logo. It looks the same even today. They are still trucking along in 2022. And it does have their famous tagline, "Serious Fun." It's kind of corny, but I've always liked it, and it's been around since the 90s. So they've stuck with it, and I'm happy that they do that. But this first title is Block Kids, and this one is probably, as you can tell by the cover, a block-breaking puzzle game, kind of in the vein of a Breakout or an Arkanoid-style game. Pretty colorful game. It has a little bit of an isometric tilt to the playfield, which gives it a little bit of a unique look. I do typically like games like this. This one's just not really all that exciting. What's, I think, really being held against it is this came out very late in the US PS1 library. This was a 2003 release. But this was a 1996 release in Japan, so you figure eight or 9 years have gone by since this game came out originally, and then they've now brought it to us as a $10 budget title in the US. So I don't really think this one sold all that well, and probably shouldn't be held against it too much just due to the delay and how long it took it to come here. But as you can see, it does have some nice perks. It supports the mouse. And I do believe this supports the paddle controller that the Japanese market got from Namco. I do have one, but I can't remember if I played it with this one. So overall, probably not one of the greatest ones, but nice that they brought it over, I guess, as a $10 title, just to have some more variety late in the PS1 life, of which we were starting to get quite a few more niche games in those last couple years of the PS1 life. So next we'll take a look at yet another budget title. This was probably a little bit more popular. I tend to see this one more commonly used, and that is Burstrick Wakeboarding. And I don't really know much about the sport of wakeboarding, but I would liken this game as kind of like a Wave Race 64 for the PS1. And it was developed by this company called Metro that also made another game we're going to take a look at here along the way. The water effects look really good in this game. It's actually very colorful, and unfortunately the gameplay itself is a little bit rough. I never really clicked on to the controls of the game, but I do like looking at the scenery. I think overall for a budget title, it shows up pretty well. Probably was released as a full price title in Japan if I had to guess. So one you can easily find. This one only cost you a couple bucks if you're interested, but not one of my favorites either. But speaking of favorites, you can't go wrong with this one. Obviously, some of my favorite characters on the cover there. This is part of the long-running Bust-A-Move series or Puzzle Bobble series. And this was Bust-A-Move 4, which came out after Bust-A-Move 2 in the US, but before Bust-A-Move 3 in the US. It's very strange and convoluted. Really, you can blame Acclaim for the other two titles, and they brought over Bust-A-Move 2 with really ugly artwork. Natsume brought us this beautiful artwork as part of the series, and then I guess Acclaim saw there was more money to be made, so they brought out Bust-A-Move 3 very late in the US, but they released it as Bust-A-Move 99, and then also put very ugly artwork on it. So Natsume was here to save the day, bringing us a classic Taito title in the US. This one is also known because it has the pulley system. There's a lot of people that are fans of the series that really hate it. I'm actually okay with it. It's not mandatory for all the modes of gameplay, so if you don't like the pulley system, you can skip it. But other than that, it's a very colorful game. It also has kind of like a full RPG mode in it, with a lot of story, that much more than you would expect for an action puzzle game. But I actually got this game new back in whatever it was, 98, I think it came out, and I have put countless hours into this game along with the other games in the series. So overall, you know my bias towards Taito games, but I always think it's cool when Natsume does partner with Taito of Japan to bring over some of their titles in the US. And I wish we would have got more on the PS1. I think there was some more opportunity for that, but at least they brought us this one with some nice artwork. So can definitely recommend this one. Another one that's pretty interesting is this title. This was also a later release. I can't remember if this was a $10 title or maybe a $20 or $30 title, but regardless, it was a little bit less than a full price title when it came out here. And this is Gekio Shooting King. And it's very interesting in Japan because this game came out first on the Sega Saturn as the game Shienryu, which I used to have on the Japanese Saturn. That game is okay. It actually plays a lot like Raiden. I'd say it's a very nice tribute to the Raiden series, but it was actually developed by a company called Warashi, and they made a few other shooters, but not really a whole ton of games over the years. But this one is pretty interesting because it is like Shienryu with like a million bonus modes. There's some really wacky stuff that was added to this game in Japan, and Natsume left it all intact for us. So there's like a weird drama, like you're playing on a stage kind of mode there's like comic sound effect modes. There's really just a lot of wackiness that was added in along with the very standard shooting game that's part of the package. So if you're looking to expand your playtime with this one, you can't really go wrong. There's a lot of weird things to explore. It's a solid shooter, not really one of my all-time favorites, but I definitely think it was welcome that they brought it over, and just has that nice classic 2D arcade style to it, so you really can't go wrong. But definitely a cool shooter release that Natsume brought us. Unfortunately, they didn't bring us any other ones. This next one is one I got very recently. This is one I knew I needed for the subset, and if you want to talk cash cows for Natsume, it would probably be the Harvest Moon series. This was actually one of the earlier releases in the series. It first came out in Super Nintendo in the US, and then we got a series of Game Boy and Game Boy Color releases, and then this one came out, I think, after at least 1 or 2 or 3 of those came out on the portable systems. But overall, pretty early compared to how they milked this series to death, literally with the cow on the back. Towards the later years when many of these came out on the PS1 and GameCube, and then really all the systems after that, you saw just an absolute glut of Harvest Moon titles that came later on. I'm hoping this one will be pretty solid. I just haven't really had a chance to get into it yet. These games are huge time sucks, so I just got to be careful of when I'm going to have time to play this one. And this game was actually developed by a company called Victor in Japan, and you'll actually see a few other titles that have a relationship with Victor as well that Natsume brought us. So they must have had a pretty good relationship with that company there. I do think Victor is actually related to the electronics company JVC, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe it was like an software offshoot of the JVC Corporation. But overall, well-loved series, has some nice artwork on it. I'm sure I'll dig this once I get some time to play it. But they are just obviously very interesting in that they were like farming RPG sims, which there really wasn't any of at the time. But now you have actually serious RPG farming sims, so it's kind of expanded a market in a different direction that didn't exist back then. Next, we'll take a look at one of the earlier Natsume titles. This one is a pretty strange release. This one is Lode Runner, and it's made up of 2 games, Lode Runner: The Legend Returns, which is the core game, and then Lode Runner Extra, which is just kind of like some software tweaks to make some bonus stages and things like that. If you're not familiar, Lode Runner was a very early computer game. I actually grew up playing Lode Runner on the Apple IIc when I was a kid, so I'm very familiar with it from kind of some of the history on it. It was always a very crude game. It worked good with early computers. I would say by the PS1 era, it was definitely showing its age in that this was a 15-year celebration of the original. And I don't really know which company created the new games that are included in here, but you do get kind of an interesting message through FMV at the intro to the game from the original creator of the game, and it feels like he's just on a Zoom call talking about the legacy of Lode Runner, and that's really the opening FMV for this game. So if you're interested in some of that history, it's probably worth a look for that. The other thing I don't really understand is Japan seems to have a massive fascination with Lode Runner, and they've had many, many more Lode Runner follow-up games that came out there that we didn't even get here. So I have a feeling this game, probably in its Japanese form, sold pretty well. This one I don't think sold very well in the US, so you don't really see this game too commonly, but it also doesn't go for a ton of money, probably just due to limited interest in the game. I did try playing it a little bit. Again, I mean, I've got rose-tinted glasses from playing Lode Runner as a kid, but overall the new game doesn't really hold up all that well. The character art is absolutely tiny, much like the original, and you think they could have done a little bit more or something with it, just to kind of spruce it up a bit. But they gave it modern music and then some color and things like that I guess the original didn't have, so if you're interested in Lode Runner, this is obviously worth getting, but for anybody else, you're probably going to be bored to tears pretty quickly. So next, let's get into Natsume's big moneymaker for the PS1, and that is Real Fishing. I'm not really well equipped to comment on this game, other than it was a Victor-developed game, I believe, as well, or at least published in Japan, that they brought over here, and fishing games were kind of niche at the time. There really weren't a whole lot that were coming out. Natsume did have a little history with it. They brought over one on Super Nintendo as well, and this game, for some reason, really found an audience, to the point that I think this is the only game in this subset that actually got a greatest hits release. So this game is very easy to find, obviously has its fans, and really kicked off the Real Fishing series onto future consoles from then on. You can still get Real Fishing games today, and they've turned them more into like RPGs and things like that to really expand the the series of the game. But overall, if you're a fishing fan, maybe you can tell me a little more in the comments of how good this game is compared to some of the other fishing games on the PS1. But this one definitely seemed to click with a much wider audience and sold a lot of copies. So, since that game was so popular for Natsume, it was the only game that earned a sequel on the PS1. And so here we have Real Fishing 2. And I can't really explain it, other than this game didn't sell nearly as well. It came out later. But I had a very hard time tracking this game down. I was really intending to find this in person, even going to cities that sold a lot of fishing games, and I just never ever could find this game in a store. So ultimately, this was the last game of the subset for me to complete, and I did just recently get this on eBay, really just for the purposes of having the set, but again, being a fishing game, it's not something I'm necessarily going to play. It does notate that it supports the official Agetec PS1 fishing controller, so that's nice. Not all the fishing games do, as far as I know. But if you are a big fishing fan, I guess that's why this is for you. It does come in a double case, which is the kind of the exception to the rest of these games. It's only a single disc game, but it does have a large manual, and that's why. So again, probably more of the same, and then we obviously got more Real Fishing games on other systems after this. So let's take a look at another of the oddball budget titles. This one is Skydiving Extreme. Again, I don't know much at all about the sport of skydiving, but this was another game that Metro developed, that same company that did the Burstrick game. And you kind of see a little bit of similarity just in the use of color and skies and things like that. They definitely had a style to them that I really like overall. And this game actually, it was a YouTuber that turned me on to this game. And Game Rave TV is the channel, and overall he was a big fan of it. He made a whole video on it, and it really got me thinking. I'm like, I should probably get that, considering it's about a $2 game. So this is easily available as well. I think it sold pretty well, probably just again due to being a budget title. It doesn't go for anything now. And what this game really, other than just being the sport of skydiving, is it's a QuickTime event game. So if you like QuickTime event games, this is probably up your alley. And it's very Simon Says in its nature, and you have to keep up with some complicated patterns. And your goal is to get your character to the bottom of the, be able to land while performing a designated number of tricks per stage. Sometimes those are done in team fashion, sometimes they're solo, that kind of thing, but it mixes it up pretty well. Again, the core game itself is pretty simple, but it is obviously worth the $10 that it originally went for, and you can probably get it even less than that today. So, nice little, budget title, just worth checking out that Natsume brought us late in the PS1 life. And we are now to our last game. Again, there was only 10 games that they published here, so it wasn't a huge library, but that is Turnabout. And this is one that I'd owned for many years, but I don't even think even popped in before today. I kind of dismissed it as just a simple puzzle game, just looked like a slide puzzle game or something, which I can't stand. But honestly, I popped this in preparation for the video, and about an hour and a half later, I realized I was still playing it. So, this was yet another budget title, and it came out late in the PS1 life. But this one was developed by a company called ArtDink that made some of the more unique titles on the PS1, and I can definitely see their stamp on this game as well. So while the core of the gameplay is really a rotate the screen and get the marble to the end of the maze type of game, they actually did do some innovation with the gameplay design and kept it fresh with some pretty tricky and unique puzzles. And then the other thing that's really interesting about this game is the music. It kind of has a nice, like, new age soothingness to it that just makes you want to keep playing. It's not aggressive in any ways. It's just a very calming game that encourages you to keep playing for more levels of the puzzle action. What I would most like in this game, too, is a favorite Japanese game by the developer Compile on the Japanese Game Boy Advance called Guru Logi Champ. And I have spent countless hours playing that game, and I realized, like, essentially this is about the same concept, but this game goes for way less than Guru Logi Champ. So if you're interested, I could probably recommend this game. Again, I don't think it's going to be for everyone, and there's not a lot of flashy graphics or anything like that, but if you just want a game to basically plug in your mind and unplug your mind at the same time, it's a good game for that. So very happy Natsume brought us, again, kind of a variety of these cheap $10 budget games that now really go for that or even less. But overall, that does it. Like I said, Natsume went on to bigger things, or at least bigger sales on some of the future consoles that came after the PS1. But it definitely a system that kept them afloat during these years. They obviously were big on putting out portable games, and I think that was their real bread and butter. So I'm glad they brought us a few console games along the way as well. But again, Natsume is alive and well in 2022. They just released the new Pocky and Rocky title, and really enjoying that as well, so you can always check out some of their future work that came out after this series. But that about does it. Hopefully you enjoyed this look at this publisher. Thank you for watching. Please take a moment, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day or night, wherever you are.